Hello everyone and welcome back to the Pulse Social Sports Podcast, where this week we're speaking to Myles Smith, head coach of the West Ham first team women's team, as he speaks about his experiences with football and with coaching.
I just wanted to start and just say massive thanks for taking your time out of training and coming to speak to us today. It means a lot.
No worries. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to help and support. And I've seen a couple of the episodes that you've done. It looks like you're onto something great. So it's a pleasure to be here, mate.
Thanks so much. So we'll just open out a little bit with just kind of who are you, where are you from, and just a little bit about yourself, really. Just get to know you.
So I'll start backwards, if you like. I'll start from current and then sort of work my way back. At the moment, I'm working within West Ham Women's, acting as first team coach and academy director within the women's setup there. I've been in the role now coming up to 4 years, I believe. Started the role very much when it was a part-time, semi-professional type of environment that the women's model was, in terms of training a couple of times a week. In the evenings, trying to balance many different jobs and many different hats at once. And then obviously I've seen it through as they've integrated into a full-time professional football program, which has been good to see. It's been great to be a part of the journey. And the way that the women's game is going and how much it's, increasing in terms of the status of it, if you like, the evolution of it is going at a rapid rate. So it's really good to be involved in that. Prior to that, I worked within the men's setup, again at West Ham. So I did an internship with the men as a sports science student, and worked there with the under 23 team, which was under 21s back then. And sort of that's what led me to the role that I'm in now, really. My mentor at the time, a guy called Greg DeCarnis, he left his role within the men's setup and went across to become the women's manager, and sort of gave me a call and asked me to go with him. So that's what sort of found me into women's football and found me into the current position I'm in today. And then sort of going, even further back, studied at Leeds Beckett, studied a sports science degree at Leeds Beckett. Prior to that, sort of your usual thing, really, played a myriad of different sports, none to an excelling level. Was never going to be that professional footballer. Was never going to be a professional sportsman, really. But I knew that from a fairly young age. And I think that sort of coaching and certainly working within sport was something that I knew I wanted to do at sort of that school leavers age, sort of that 16-year-old age, if you like. So I went on to college and started to get things together to try and form myself a career. And this is, I guess, just the journey that I'm on and where I'm at the moment.
No, absolutely. It's really interesting to see kind of how different people take different routes into the sport. And obviously that's covered the how, but what made you decide and why did you kind of choose to get involved with coaching?
I think that it's always been of interest to me. Going through my studies, I was a personal trainer for many years. I don't know how many years exactly, but I was always working as a personal trainer, which is a form of coaching, very different to working in elite sport, of course, but it is a form of coaching. And I just enjoyed, I think, all of the things that come with it, the interaction with others, helping and supporting others, trying to get the best out of people. And then sort of as I've gone on and sort of, certainly stepping into the sports science department on my first internship, something that I really enjoyed and obviously something I studied at uni, but I always had one eye on the coaching side. And, certainly in the department that I was in the environment that I was in, I always saw that the coaches had a little bit more influence, which I think is probably right in many environments. And I sort of crave that influence, if that makes sense. So, and obviously being a big football fan, if you like, always watched football, always played football. So it's always been a huge interest of mine. And then sort of as it's gone on and developed, it's sort of formed its own. I've got hobbies and key interest alongside it. So human development for me is a really key interest. It's sort of what I read every day, every hour that I'm not at work, human development and sort of the pedagogy system and how humans learn, how humans develop. And for me, that can all be applied to coaching, similar to how it's applied to or should be applied to teaching. So I've sort of gone off in my own little avenue and explored different things and sort of made it my own, what coaching should be. I'm sure many people have got their opinions on that.
No, absolutely. And then looking at your coaching career, I understand that you coached at the University of East London and some of their football teams.
I did, yes. I forgot to mention that. There's probably a few different roles that have been and gone along the way that I forgot to mention, but it was a really good role actually. I was at UEL at the same time that my first year at West Ham Women's. So when we was very much a part-time, like I said, semi-professional environment, training in the evenings. That wasn't paying the electricity bills, so I had to top that up with a couple more roles. And part of that role, we had a partnership with UEL, and I oversaw the women's football department at the University of East London. We had a very successful year. What I deem as successful, that's different to everybody. But we had a lot of players who got given a lot of opportunities at high level football. And then sort of my own personal KPIs that I had within my contract there. We did very well in terms of winning the league, winning the cup as well. But, again, sort of not real personal, huge aspirations of mine. I'm more around the development side. Is where I think that we got getting the best out of those players, giving players further opportunities to play at West Ham as an example and other local clubs to try and support them along their football journeys, really.
No, definitely. And then looking at kind of the university as they focus football as one of their kind of main sports, if you like. How did you find kind of the difference between coaching a professional team such as West Ham and a university team such as UEL?
Well, at the time, West Ham weren't deemed as a professional team. So at the time, it was very similar, if I'm honest. Like I said, it was a couple of training sessions a week. It was a match on a Wednesday. And, I remember me and my coaching assistant, we used to go to Hackney Marshes and put up the nets. And the players could not believe it that we were putting up the nets. All the previous coaches that they've had were sort of like, well, as players, we normally put up the nets and we normally get the dressing room ready. And just small tweaks like that we implemented, that we think should be a given, if that makes sense. Players shouldn't have to go and put up their nets, And I remember we used to laugh and say that it's character building, myself and my assistant. It's character building, and we'll look back on this and laugh and it will always sort of keep us leveled and keep us grounded. But yeah, we used to make sure that when the players arrived, all the changing room, there was coat hangers up with all the shirts, all the socks and shorts were folded. How you'd want a dressing room to look if you was playing at football at a high-ish level. So we used to make sure that happened. But sort of now I am working in the professional environment within the women's team since they've come through and now in the Super League. There is a lot of differences. Players that are trying to balance dual education alongside football obviously speaks for itself, the amount of workload that they've got. I think more around the athlete, obviously in the professional environment, you usually find a more professional athlete, if that makes sense. So both on and off the field, making sure just little things, whether it's that they're actually attending training or they're on time for training or they're looking after themselves pre and post training. That sort of speaks for itself within the environment that I'm in at the moment, where it's UEL, we have to really push for that and make sure it happened. And just sort of the little things that you kind of expect from being in an elite environment, we didn't always find were happening within UEL. So we just had to try and instill that philosophy, instill that culture, if you like. And we only had a year to do it. So those things often take a while, but I think that we did a good job. And towards the end, all players were singing from the same book, which was good.
No, absolutely. I think it's really keen for coaches to kind of look after their players and athletes and not just instruct them to do things. So that's really nice to see. And looking at kind of more into the West Ham coaching aspect. How would you say the season has been affected by coronavirus, and how did the team adapt their training during the multiple lockdowns?
Yeah, so there's sort of two strands to this, I guess. We've got the sort of the first team strand, and then obviously the academy strand as well. I'll start with the academy. It's a little bit more obvious that very limited football has been played this year for the 40 players that we've got in the 18s to 21 environment, and for the other sort of 60 that we've got in the 10s to 16 environment. So with that, our biggest focus area was around mental health and ensuring that players were still sort of, being stimulated as much as they possibly could be. I remember in the first lockdown, we'd speak to players at sort of 2:00 in the afternoon, and some of them were only just woken up, because there was no school, and obviously they're teenagers, and that's what you do when you're a teenager. But we had to find ways of making sure that we were stimulating them and not just putting things on for the sake of putting things on, but things that they would actually engage and take part in and want to take part in. Most recently, the academies have gone back, which is great. Our 18s to 21s are now operating under elite status, which means that they're able to train even if there's another lockdown. They're able to remain training and play games, which is great. So they're starting to see that side of things now. But also around the first team, we had a small period of lockdown during the first window, and obviously that's where the multidisciplinary team come in. With regards to making sure that players are keeping their fitness levels topped up, making sure players are, when we do return to training, that we're integrating them back in a safe way, if that makes sense. Making sure that we've got all the COVID protocols in place, and the medical team very much lead on that. But everybody is sort of making, we have to all ensure that we're doing our bit. We're following the protocols. We know the protocols inside out, so that we can maintain them ourselves, but also we can tell players when they may not be maintaining them. And then I think it's a similar thing with the academy, just ensuring that we're supporting players. Some players that actually got coronavirus, some of the staff that got coronavirus, the club did a fantastic job on ensuring that there was support for them. The wider club, from the stadium staff and HR departments, just making sure that we have sort of online coffee clubs and opportunities to speak to other members of staff throughout the department. So it was a really nice sort of feel to it in a way. Obviously, it wasn't a nice time for anybody, but you always try to look at the positives, and I think that the club did a great job in ensuring that one, sort of mitigating the risks and trying to minimise them, and then two, ensuring that the safety and the well-being of everybody was put at the forefront.
No, definitely. No, it's really good to see coaching staff kind of taking initiative during the lockdown when no one was allowed to train. And obviously during the lockdown as well, you've mentioned, but the Women's Super League took a big break. And do you think that the break affected kind of the awareness of the Women's Super League and women's football as a whole?
Infected it in terms of the popularity, do you mean? Or
yeah, in terms of popularity, awareness, and just, yeah.
I wouldn't have said it affected its popularity. I think that obviously the World Cup did great in ensuring that the fan base of women's football increased, and I think the FA are doing they're working towards ensuring that participation levels are increasing all the time within young female footballers, that fan engagement is increasing. And if you look at it, if you look at sort of pre-COVID, which I know is a nice thing to think about, all of the WSL clubs or the majority of the clubs, certainly us speaking on our halves, we had, it was the most full the stadium was. We had the most fans in the ground. We had the biggest, highest attendance that we've ever had on average, and the engagement was becoming more and more. I don't think COVID necessarily stopped that. I think it may have paused it, of course, like it did pause a lot of things, but I don't think there was necessarily a decrease. I think what it did have an effect on was the resources that maybe women's, whether it's the FA or women's clubs can implement. Obviously, COVID was a big financial hit for a lot of people, and football certainly wasn't the worst hit by all means, but it also, it was still hit. It did take a big hit financially, and I think that Whereas in the men's game, you've obviously got a lot of more resources and a lot more finance being pumped into it. And within the women's game, there's not quite that. So I think at one point there was a little bit of a scary moment, whether, there was a few questions being asked, whether it would survive, whether it was going to be able to continue. But thankfully it has, thankfully it did. And we seem to be back on the way to grow in the women's game again, which is one of the most important things.
No, absolutely. And then sticking to kind of West Ham's playing performance, you guys had a perfect 3-for-3 in the group stages of the Women's Super League Cup, and then a strong performance over Durham as well. What was it like to get to the semi-final of the Women's Super League Cup?
Would have been nicer to get to the final, but no, it was good. With these things, obviously, we've got our own sort of targets and KPIs in-house internally. If we rewind back a couple of years ago, we actually made the FA Cup final at Wembley, which was a great achievement for the club. It was something that will always be remembered, playing at Wembley in front of I think it was 40,000 plus fans inside the stadium, and we put on a good show for the majority of the game. And that journey within the FA Cup was a great one to be a part of. And having been a part of that, you then into the Conti Cup and you're getting through the group stage, and you get a draw that you'd think you'd be favourites in the semis, and also you're starting to think the same things. You're starting to think, maybe we can get to another final here. So it was good. It was an exciting journey. It would have been a lot better with the fans involved, of course, like all of the games would be. But yeah, no, we did well. The team did well, and now obviously we can't dwell on that. We're out of the cup, and we need to start focusing on the league.
No, absolutely. And I won't keep you much longer. Just one final question, if that's okay. And what would you say has been the highlight of your career personally?
Highlight of my career. I think certainly my time at West Ham. I've been at West Ham in many different sort of positions, whether it's been an under-23 sports scientist in the men's game, or whether it's been coaching the under-10s in the men's academy, whether it's being, the academy manager for the women's, or the first team coach for the women's, or, whatever it may be. My time at West Ham has seen me come on quite a journey. I think the amount of people that I've worked with, sort of what we've built, certainly within the academy, we stepped in, the team stepped in a couple of years ago, and we had a lot of work to do. And looking at it now, we've got a lot of work still to do, but we've come such a long way. I think that's a personal achievement that I'll look back on, especially within my first sort of academy management role, and be happy for, and always remember, I guess.
No, absolutely. It just seems like such a fantastic job, and it seems like you and the rest of the staff are doing such a good job at West Ham. I just wanted to say huge thanks for coming and giving your time.
No worries. Thank you very much. And like I said, I look forward to following the podcast and seeing where it goes.
As usual, we wanted to say a massive thank you to Myles for coming on the show with us, but a massive thank you to everyone at home as well for watching. If you like more content like this, please like and subscribe to our Facebook, our Twitter, our LinkedIn, or our YouTube at Social CIC. That's all we've got time for. We'll see you next episode.